Today I wanted to talk to you about the research you're going to be doing this week for Madam C.J. Walker. So this is something that you are going to work on a little bit every day this week until you're done. I'd really rather that you didn't just do it all in one day because that's not really the best way to do research. So I'm going to model for you what I think is a good strategy for doing your research today and the rest of the week. It's hard for me to go back and forth and show you the website, so I printed off one of the websites today. There's really no reason for you to do that. Again, you should just use it from the computer screen. There's no real reason to print it off. I just did that because it was really hard for me to figure out how to go back and forth from my document camera back to the internet and record it very easily. So the first thing I do is I'm going to get out a notebook and I'm going to make sure that I know what I'm doing. So I'm doing my C.J. Walker research. So it's important that you have a piece of paper and that you are writing on it and that you've titled it so that you know when you come back to it. Also, don't be that person who turns to a random page in a notebook. Turn to the next available page in the section of your notebook that you're using, because otherwise, how are you supposed to find it later? The next thing I did was I wrote down my 5 questions. You should have come up with your 5 questions last week and already turned those in. So on your paper, you need to write them. You might notice that I didn't leave any room to answer them because that's not really what I'm doing here, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the research page in Canvas and I'm going to find one of the websites. You can go to any of the websites that you want. This first one that I chose is the Kittle. And so in my notebook, I wrote down website number 1 and then I wrote Kittle so it would remind me which website I got it from in case I need to go back to it later. So what I'm doing is I'm going to be taking notes in my notebook based on what I read here. Okay? So some interesting things that I see right away is that her real name is actually Sarah Breedlove, and that seems pretty important to me. And even though it's not one of my questions, I'm still going to write it down because I know that later on I'm going to have an assignment to do, and that's something that seems important to me. So I'm going to write down that her real name was Sarah Breedlove. And I might even put the years just so that I can remind myself the time period that she lived in. So I keep reading, and it says she was an American entrepreneur and philanthropist. And if I don't know what those words mean, I should stop and look them up. If I do know what they mean, then I should keep going. She was said to be the first female self-made millionaire in America. Well, my first question here on my notes is that why was she famous? So I'm going to put in number 1 so that I know that that's the question that I'm answering. I'm going to say she was the first self-made female millionaire in the U.S. That's the kind of bottom line basic reason why she's famous. All right. So then I come back here. It tells me how much money she was worth. I can write that down if I want to. I'm not sure that I really am interested in that right now, but I know I can come back to it if I need to. So we don't really know about how much she made. It says she made her fortune in her hair care business. So I can add to that. First self-made female millionaire in the U.S. made hair care products. Her own hair loss caused her to look for hair growing solutions. She developed and marketed a successful line of beauty and hair products for Black women. She started the company Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. Okay, so that tells me what made her choose to be an entrepreneur. Well, now I know that. She chose to be an entrepreneur because she couldn't find any products that she needed to fix her problem, so she invented them herself. So I say she had hair loss problems, so she invented a way to solve them. So I put the number 2 here because that's the second question that I'm answering. It's just to kind of help myself keep track that I'm answering the questions. Now it tells me the name of her company. I would say the name of her company goes back to number 1. That's why is she famous? So Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company. Okay. If I could keep scrolling down, it says on December 23rd, 1867, she was born on a plantation near the village of Delta, Louisiana. Oh, so she wasn't born in Indiana, she was born in Louisiana. So I can just, this is not an answer to any of my questions, so I can just say she was born in Louisiana. It says she was the fifth child born to recently freed slaves. Huh. Fifth child, former slaves. She was their first child born free. Oh, so everybody else in her family had been a slave at one point except for her. She was the first one that wasn't a slave. Wow. That might tell me a little bit about what her life was like. That can also give me information about what her family was like. So I might say 3 and 5. She was the first in her family who wasn't a slave. So this is what I want you to do. Maybe each day choose a different website. One thing that kids get in the habit of doing is going back and forth from their screen to their page where they're typing their essay. And what that does is it means that you're not really putting it in your own words. Maybe you don't go so far as to actually copy and paste, but sometimes when you don't do the work of a real researcher, then you're not really learning anything. You're just taking information from one page and putting it on another. So taking notes when you research is actually really important. So I want you to practice that this week. So today, choose one of the websites and go through the entire website and do what I'm doing. Take notes. You're not just scanning the page looking for answers to your questions. You're reading what the page actually says, and then you're writing down things that you think are important. And then if it's one of your questions, you're just making note that it's answering one of your questions. Okay, so please spend 10 to 15 minutes today on one of the websites taking notes in an actual notebook. And then Tuesday, you'll do the same thing with a different website. Wednesday, the same thing. So then by Friday, you'll have gone through 5 websites and you'll have information. So the question is, Ms. F, if I've already written it down in one place, do I have to write it down in another? And the answer really is that's up to you. I don't know that you need to write it down. Like if you find out that her name was Sarah Breedlove, I don't know that you need to write that down 5 times. But certainly if you find it 5 times, that must be something that's pretty important. Okay, so you can use your best judgment as to how many times you would write the exact same thing down, because by the time you get to Friday, certainly some of your research will start to overlap. And that's a good thing, because it means you're doing the work of a real researcher. Okay, so this week, concentrate on your research and find out as much as you can about Madam C.J. Walker.